Nola Devlin checks herself out in the mirror after getting ready for work. She tucks her belly in, scrutinizing her figure while the monologue in the background goes on about how every woman has her own beauty and grace, no matter what her size is. She gives her cat food while also grabbing a burrito from her fridge as her breakfast. The monologue continues to elaborate that Cinderella's problem was not her evil stepmother or sisters. Instead, it was the fact that it's easier to hide out and clean a house than stepping out to look for your happiness. Nola makes it out on the street and eyes the billboard which shows the voice of the monologue. It is Belinda Apple, an anonymous columnist at Shine magazine who inspires numerous women, including Nola, while not even giving up her real name. She calls out the impossible and overly perfect beauty standards set in society, and how hard it is for regular women to get the confidence to overcome their insecurities and fulfill those standards. Nola stops by a newspaper stand where she moves the other magazines to make sure that Shine magazine is at the front on all shelves. She sips her coffee as she stops by the window of a shop that showcases a beautiful flowy white dress with a dazzling pair of heels. She looks at it temptingly before hopping in her car and finally heading to work. Her car sputters and stops midway through, smoke coming out of its engine. She opens the trunk and understands that she can't do anything to fix it right now. So she grabs her work materials and rushes to her workplace. She is just outside the building when the papers fall from occupied hands and scatter all over the floor. She hastily gathers them up while a stranger comes to her aid. He asks her if she's okay and she responds that her car, which she calls Pumpkin, broke down in the middle of the road. He smiles at her choice of name for a restored '65 Mustang as he hands her some of her papers. She turns around to face him and questions whether he works here. He insinuates that his work is part-time and she smiles at him until she realizes that she has to go to work. She frantically runs inside the building screaming that she might get fired that day. She catches up to her coworker Joy, who is taking some donuts into the meeting that already started without Nola. As soon as she steps in with Joy, her boss Lori criticizes her lack of punctuality and pays no heed to her excuse about her car breaking down. Nola quietly sits down with her other colleagues as Lori continues the meeting. She addresses Nancy, who handles legal matters for Shine magazine. Nancy's job is to handle lawsuits against the magazine, and she reminds the others not to get in any more trouble than they already are. Lori initiates a brainstorming session for new ideas that they can work on. Everyone is spitballing as Nola stuffs her face with a powdered donut. Lori calls her out in that very position and mentions the recent development of Belinda Apple. Stanson Publications, the company which owns Shine magazine, and therefore, Lori wants to publish a book written by Belinda Apple as well. Nola responds that Belinda never mentioned a book to her, and Lori takes this opportunity to insult her, claiming that Nola is just the editor of Belinda's column, not her best friend. Lori also discloses that she will write the foreword to Belinda's self-help book, even though Nola deserves it more, as she has edited all of Belinda's columns so far. Lori completely shuts Nola up while not forgetting to humiliate her too. As Nola and Nancy step out of the meeting together, Nancy voices her opinion on how Nola is the one who deserves to write the intro, because she's an amazing writer. Nola doesn't mind and is excited for Belinda to have this wonderful opportunity to write this book. She is called for some task again by Lori, so she takes her leave. Before walking away, she confirms with Nancy about their lunch plan with Deb on the weekend. Lori wants Nola to gather each and every piece of information she can about Belinda and her life. This would involve calling Belinda, but Nola proposes the idea of drafting the foreword for Lori, who turns down this offer while pointing out that Nola is a nobody. Lori arrogantly dismisses Nola, who is later approached by Joy. She expresses that she's sorry about Nola's car breaking down. She informs Nola that the new computer guy they hired called Chip lives near her house and can give her a ride today. She tells Nola to meet him in the parking lot after work. When Nola steps up to the car, she sees that Chip is the guy who helped her this morning. She approaches him and reminds him about their interaction this morning. She properly introduces herself as she sits in his car while he looks a bit confused. He starts the car to drop her home, while asking if she really did get fired today. She rants to him about her day and how distressed she is about her car breaking down. This is because her dad gifted her that car on her 16th birthday, and it has accompanied her through all major life events. He insinuates that this could bring a positive change in her life as she can buy a new car now. He brings up getting a Porsche, and she admits that it's her backup fantasy car. Nevertheless, she can't afford a car like that on her salary, but Chip seems like a guy who values his dreams over rationality. He gives her the advice his father gives him to grow up and take charge of his life. They pull up to her house and she offers to pay for her share of the fuel, but he declines. Before leaving, she argues with his father's advice and hints that change comes from inspiration. Once she's home, Nola logs into what appears to be Belinda's email account and reads emails from women similar to her, seeking help and life advice. She writes the response to that email in a voice mimicking Belinda. It turns out that Lori was once looking for a columnist to be the face of their magazine and write responses to their readers' personal problems. When Nola stepped up for the job, she was rejected despite her talent, because she didn't look the part in Lori's eyes. This broke Nola's spirit, but not her dream of writing. So she resorted to photoshopping her face on the body of a model to create the avatar of Belinda Apple. She has been writing using that identity ever since, and no one knows about it. Nola gets a call from Lori, who hasn't been to talk to Belinda on the phone and is now thinking of going to London to meet her, because that's where she is said to live. This deal is very important for Lori because Belinda's book will launch a new division for the publishing company. Nola freaks out when she learns that this book will come with a tour, signings, readings, interviews, and many other personal appearances. Lori is still on call with Nola when she calls Belinda's number, which causes Nola's other phone to ring. Nola talks on both phones using her different voices and accents while Lori thinks that she is on a conference call with Nola and Belinda. Nola acts as Belinda and tells Lori that she can't make it before hanging up. Lori makes it clear to Nola that she must get Belinda on board since she recommended her. Otherwise, she will destroy both Nola and Belinda's career. When Nola, Nancy, and Deb get to the restaurant for lunch, they request to sit at their favorite table by the window because it's empty. The waiter, Chester, lies that it's reserved, and they all know that they got the worst table because they are being discriminated against based on their body size. Nancy leads the group as they walk out of the restaurant, and Deb wishes she had a magic wand that could make them instantly thin. Deb pulls out Belinda's column as she believes her to be every woman's fairy godmother. Nancy questions the credibility of Belinda's advice as Nola works with her, and is still a mess. Deb reads out Belinda's advice on how to reclaim your body while Nancy estimates that Belinda could never have been overweight. They're all having burgers when Deb proposes the idea of the three of them starting a journey together to be happy with their bodies, because she really believes in Belinda's advice. Nancy agrees on the condition that they will return to shame Chester with their new skinny bodies. They sign a Cinderella pact to change themselves through their friendship, but Nola's goal is yet to be determined. The three of them show up to a gym to work out together the next day, but Deb chickens out and starts to cry. Nola is comforting and motivating her when she runs into Chip, who works out here. Nola introduces him to her friends and lies that they just worked out together. Once he's gone, Nola's friends share their opinions on how cute he is for Nola. They remember their Cinderella pact and hire a personal trainer to lead their workout sessions. They also throw away each other's secret food stashes and weigh each other regularly to track their progress. Nola finally decides on her goal and shows it to her friends. It's the white dress with the sequined heels in the showcase she passes by every morning. She takes a picture of it to use it as motivation. She later gets a call on Belinda's phone from her agent, Charlotte, who complains about never getting a hold of her. Nola talks in her British accent as Belinda, as Charlotte emphasizes the same requests Lori made to her. Nola makes up an excuse to hang up on her without scheduling her dates because her dinner burned in the oven. That's when Deb comes over too, and Nola is bummed to hear that she's considering getting surgery to change her body. Their conversation is interrupted by a call from Chip, who got Nola's number through the company directory. He claims to be in her neighborhood and wants to meet her for a drink that night. Deb and Nola are both thrilled at this invitation and postpone their discussion about stomach surgery because Nola must meet Chip in half an hour. She shows up to meet him in a dress but still can't measure up to the skinny waitresses roaming around in shorts and tube tops. He compliments her and learns that she rented a Volvo instead of buying a new car. She quickly finishes her drink before they get into seamless conversation and begin to have a good time. Chip suddenly gets alarmed and pinpoints a skinny blonde who just walked out of the ladies' room. He admits that she's an ex-girlfriend with whom things ended badly. He kisses Nola all of a sudden as his ex walks toward them. He introduces Nola to his ex Angie as his new girlfriend, and she explicitly mocks Nola and calls her fat. Nola gets offended and punches Angie before storming out of the bar. Chip shakes his head at Angie before following Nola out on the street. Nola is in tears and he keeps apologizing for putting her in that position. She cries, feeling humiliated, and directly asks him why he wanted to see her tonight. He explains that he felt really comfortable with her and wanted to be friends. He knows that he acted stupidly and they finally make up. He makes plans to see her after his 6-week-long trip to Los Angeles before departing. Nola reminds herself that guys like him don't end up with girls like her. She later tells her friends too that he's out of her league when they tease her at lunch. Deb is engrossed in learning more about the surgery. She is even willing to put her health at risk because it has been a month since their pact. While Nola and Nancy lost weight, she gained more of it and needs to be thinner at any cost. She demands her friends' support because she has already scheduled the surgery. Nola is in for a shock at work as Mr. Stanson has moved up the book release date and is throwing Belinda a launch party in the first week of September. Lori can't get any trace of Belinda and questions her existence, threatening to send her to jail if she violates her contract term of public appearances. Nola goes to Nancy to get hypothetical legal advice on what happens if talent doesn't come through on their commitments. Nancy calls her out for letting others like Lori and Belinda take credit for her achievements because she lacks confidence. Nancy assures her that one day she will be ready to take center stage, but until that day, she must find comfort without food. So Nola and her friends carry on with their Cinderella pact until the day of Deb's procedure arrives. Nola and Nancy are by Deb's side to support her, and she really appreciates it. However, her husband Paul is not present here because he probably doesn't approve of this decision. He likes her the way she is, but she herself is not satisfied with her body. Nola teaches her to not let him dictate her choices, as she has the right to get the body she wants for herself. When Nola and Nancy wait, Nola commends Nancy for always taking a stand for herself, which is why her husband also shows his support in all her decisions. Nancy admits to Nola that she might believe Belinda to be right for once. She wasn't always like this. She used to have a waist and a lean figure when she first started working at Stanson, but she used to get sexually harassed back then, and she didn't do anything, which makes her ability to take a stand questionable. She fears that losing weight might get her unwanted attention again. This would make her feel like a hypocrite for representing women in sexual harassment cases when she lets it happen to herself. Nola assures her that she won't let it happen again when Deb is brought out, because she's done with her procedure. Nancy snags a nice shirt from the fashion department for Nola for her next outing with Chip, because her physique is really starting to show now. When Chip picks her up, he compliments that she looks different in a good way. He brings her out to reveal a surprise that he rented out her dream car for her, and even lets her drive it. This is his way of apologizing, which blows her away. But she hesitates to drive it because it's risky. She finally gains her confidence and drives to the park. Their day goes well and she confesses that this is the most fun she's had without trans fat being involved. She learns that he is from a wealthy family but has been trying to make a name and living on his own. They see some girls playing cricket, which brings out Nola's hidden passion for the game. Chip has to cheat in order to defeat her, and she confides in him about what it's like working with Belinda. He not only understands her but relates to her too, as he has also lived in his father's shadow his whole life. When he drops her off, he wants to make dinner plans after he comes back from another trip. She clarifies that there's no need for that as he's forgiven for the Angie debacle. He conveys that it's a date and they'll go bowling, so that he can get back at her for the cricket game. She coyly says yes. Lori discloses that Stanson wants Belinda to write the introduction to her book too, and Nola takes this opportunity to stand up for herself. She talks on Belinda's behalf as she explains that Belinda doesn't want to be a part of the publishing of this book, because it's too soon for her. Lori emphasizes how important Belinda and her book are to this magazine. This is because Stanson might even terminate the magazine division if Belinda doesn't show up at the launch party to support the book. This drives Nola crazy and she heads home early from work to get her bearings back. 2 months later, she is shopping with Deb, who seems to have lost a lot of inches and needs to buy new clothes that fit her. However, her relationship with Paul still hasn't healed because the more weight she loses, the angrier he gets. Deb is considering couples therapy now and wonders what advice Belinda would give her in this situation. Nola makes her understand that she deserves someone who loves her unconditionally, and if Paul isn't that person, she should consider other options. Deb steps out of the changing room and is much thinner now as she lost 37 pounds in the last 2 months. Nola tells her that she's proud of her and she gives the credit to her friends in the Cinderella pact. They also get a new dress for Nola to wear on her date with Chip, since her brain needs to catch up with her body. The clothes in her closet hang really loose on her body because she has lost weight too. She follows Belinda's advice as she gets ready for her date with Chip, and she looks beautiful. Chip is amazed to see her when he comes over to pick her up and can't stop himself from kissing her. She is still recovering from this nice surprise when she gets an unexpected call from Nancy. She had some issues with her computer, so the company sent Chip, the computer guy, to fix it, and he's not the one Nola is on a date with. She confronts the man she just kissed and finds out that he's Alex Stanson, the sole heir of Stanson Publishing. He didn't want her to treat him differently because of his position, because he admired her natural and unguarded self the day he gave her a ride. He is in charge of the book division that's launching Belinda's book, and his reputation and career depend on it. She suspects that he got closer to her because he knew that she edited Belinda's columns. She tells him to leave because she feels used by him. He tries to clear his name, but she firmly instructs him to leave because this is all too complicated now. She is later stalking Alex at work and learns that he has had a lot of girlfriends in the past, and all of them look like the cover girls on the magazines his dad's company publishes. Lori approaches Nola and shows her Belinda's contract, demanding for her to show up at the party. This is because Legal is really worried, and is about to catch up on the fact that Belinda doesn't exist in real life. Nola makes plans to see Nancy after work and unveils Alex's true identity to her. She confesses that she really liked him and has a feeling that he actually liked her too, but she is sure that they can have a future together. She also comes clean to Nancy about being Belinda Apple, and how the woman on the billboards is just a photoshopped version of herself. No one else knows about this because it wasn't supposed to go this far. Nola had no idea that this alter ego of hers would get so famous and just wanted to prove herself as a good writer. She wanted to call Lori out for judging people on their physical attributes instead of their qualifications. Nola apologizes to Nancy for not telling her this sooner because they both know that this could even get Nancy fired, as everyone would assume that she knew about it all along, being Nola's best friend. Yet, Nancy decides to trust Nola to do the right thing. They also smile, and believe that at least the Cinderella pact was a good thing that came out of all this because they both feel so confident in their bodies now. They're complaining about Lori going off the rails when Deb calls Nola. They go to a fancy hotel where Deb is talking to a guy named Josh at the bar. She introduces him to Nola and Nancy and offers them drinks. They remind Deb that she isn't allowed to have drinks this soon after her surgery and that she shouldn't be hitting it off with some random businessman because she's married. Deb declares that she no longer wants to settle in her life and seems delighted to have all these choices now. She might even end her marriage now, and Nola gives her some much-needed clarity and a dose of some harsh truth. She also confesses to Deb that she is and has been Belinda all this time, which makes Deb upset because she feels betrayed by the lack of honesty. Deb walks out on Nola, who keeps getting voice messages from Alex, who still wants her. Nola calls Charlotte using Belinda's voice because she has made her decision. She meets up with Charlotte, who is surprised to see that Nola isn't as British or stylish as Belinda. They discuss what options she has over drinks and get the idea of turning Nola into her diva avatar to make an appearance at the party. Nola highly doubts that anyone would be convinced even after changing her appearance, but that's her best bet right now. She's drinking alone at the bar when Alex walks over to her and finds her really drunk. He gets her some dinner and makes up with her. They end up spending the night together at her place, where she sees for herself how much he admires her body and mind. She's still concerned about the book launch when he declares that he's fallen in love with her. Nola is about to quit when she comes across tons of fan mail that's proof of how she made a real impact on women's lives. She shares that her dress is gone from the shop when Nancy brings up that they have to get back at Chester tomorrow, which is the goal of the pact. Nola is venting about her dilemma when Nancy takes a stand against the colleague who used to. She is immediately fired for this, but she plans to take him down with a lawsuit. Deb eventually comes around and they learn that they were holding a grudge against Chester for nothing because the table really was reserved. Nola is glad that the pact worked for her friends, but her problem still isn't solved. Her friends sit her down and lecture her about how Belinda was inside her all along. It is time for her to take charge of the recognition she deserves and step out into the spotlight. It turns out that the dress was removed from the showcase because they bought it for her, along with matching heels and her dream car. Nola gets an elaborate makeover and shows up at the party with her friends by her side. Everyone at the party celebrates her, and it takes some time for Lori and Alex to recognize that this is Nola. She speaks her truth in front of everyone in the press and what led her to write under Belinda's name and identity. She and Alex kiss at midnight while her friends cheer for her. At last, she publishes a book called The Cinderella Pact under her name and becomes a bestseller author.